Hello, this is Mike Ginnitti from Spot Track. I felt it was necessary to hop back on and explain, expound, expand, and assess a little bit more about this tweet specifically, which, look, it's a passive aggressive shot at two different directions here. I posted this in the middle of the Chiefs game this Sunday against Washington when the rest of the world was destroying Patrick Mahomes, okay, for 2 interceptions, one of which was a tip ball, one of which was an actual bad throw. The Chiefs recovered. The Chiefs won big. They're back on track. They're going to be one of the contenders in the AFC. I did this for 2 reasons. Number one, I knew it would stir the pot. I'm not an idiot. I knew it would stir the pot because we are so reactive. We are so reactionary. We are so week by week, which is fair. The NFL is a short season. It's short lifespan. The careers are small. But in some cases, we just have to think bigger, more baseball, maybe a little bit more basketball. That's what Patrick Mahomes is. He's not a football contract, and it never was. So, yes, I was stirring the pot to the left, but I was also saying out loud, with this number, with this data, with these facts, this is how crazy this contract is in comparison to everything else we reference with the NFL. It's nuts. And I don't think I've done enough justice to actually break down just how crazy it is. So here's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to first explain my tweet, which I've done. Second, I'm going to walk through the Mahomes contract again, but with a different angle. Not with how much money is he going to make, because he's absolutely going to be making tons of money here, and that's, nobody's guessing game. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you Josh Allen's contract, and I'm not going to go line by line and say he's making this much this year. That's not what I'm doing here. What I'm simply going to do is I'm going to show you the stability of these contracts, both from a player and from a team standpoint. So that means dead cap, dead cash, outs, guarantees, right in the middle of these things, because the middle of these two contracts are very, very different. And honestly, the overall arching theme of these two contracts are completely different, even though, and I think it's pretty clear now, these are the two quarterbacks in the AFC, maybe in the NFL. They're going to be jousting back at each other. And yes, we will include Lamar Jackson, but not on his rookie contract. We have to see how that looks, smells, tastes, and is structured before I can, go pound for pound with Lamar, Mahomes, and Allen. But that's going to be the trio for all intents and purposes. For now, we have these two. So just to expand on this tweet and understand that, yes, there was some trolling, but also, hey, this is how crazy this thing is from the Chiefs and from the Mahomes standpoint. So here we go. Here's the contract. You've all seen it, I'm sure. If you're listening to this, you've seen this contract and this page. This is what it looks like for the next, 12 years. It's a lot, but it's really hard to bake all of the ingredients and really understand what the hell is happening here by just looking at a bunch of columns. So I'm going to simplify you and give it a little bit less. Like I said, guarantees, dead cap, structure. Okay. I've lumped the next 3 years into this top tier right here. All right. So just to break down this table quickly, these are the actual cap hits that exist starting next year, running through 2031. This is going to be cumulative dead cap that I have updated per these dates. Okay, so that's what you don't see on the Patrick Mahomes contract on Spot Track right now, because the contract that exists there needs to get to 2023 before it changes, or a restructure before it changes. I'm simply giving you the now look at Mahomes on SpotTrack.com. This, I'm accounting for every element that could happen every March. And that's what I'm going to break down for you here in a second. Dead cap cash. This is future cash guaranteed that hasn't been paid out yet. That would have to hit the cap if he was traded or released. If he was released, I should say. Traded, it would go to the new team. But if they were to release Patrick Mahomes next March, for instance, they would owe him $106.7 million cash. Not going to happen. Okay? This is the dead cap that exists. So, signing bonus proration, restructured signing bonus proration, and we'll talk about that in a second as well. They did restructure his roster bonus this year, so that added up a little bit in terms of dead cap. There's a very big difference, by the way, and I want to get that out here up front. The difference between cash and cap when it comes to dead cap is this $23 million next March could be split up across 2022 and 2023. Whatever existed in 2022 would stay. Anything past 2022 would become 2023 dead cap. So when you're talking about a post-June 1st release with a lot of players or trade, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about dead cap that can be split up over 2 years. That's not the case with dead cap cash. All right? Any future guaranteed salary, guaranteed roster bonus immediately accelerates to the current year. Okay? So let's say they released Patrick Mahomes next March 15th. It would be $130 million in dead cap all in 2022. No ifs, ands, or buts around it. So that's not happening. And oh, by the way, the tweet that I showed you before that I put out on Sunday, I don't think they're going to cut Patrick Mahomes. I don't think Patrick Mahomes is a terrible quarterback. I think he's an elite quarterback. I don't think the NFL has figured out Patrick Mahomes. So all those narratives that were being thrown out there, which is kind of the reason I put that poison tweet, into the mix, is I don't agree with any of it. I think we're just overreacting to what was a weird first half from Mahomes. He figured it out in like 8 minutes, and generally the good ones do, halftime adjustments. So none of this conversation is alluding to the fact that I think Patrick Mahomes will be cut at some point. What I'm actually showing you is the exact opposite. I'm showing you here just how freaking hard it's going to be for the Chiefs to move on. It is lock and key. And I don't think even the contract experts out there have given this enough due. It is one of the most strongest structured contracts in the history of the sport, maybe in the history of sports for a non-guaranteed contract sport. That's what the NFL is. And this isn't a fully guaranteed contract, but my God, is it close for being 13 years in total span. All right, the actual cap hits right now. The dead cap that exists next March. Every single March, something triggers. Generally, it's 2 years early, a salary, a roster bonus, a workout bonus become fully guaranteed. So the evolution is extremely up and down. All right? So for instance, let's just take the next 3 years out of it because he's not being touched in the next 3 years. It's just not happening. The dead cap numbers are untenable for any kind of movement to even be considered. All right? He is fully guaranteed through 2023 right now. Next March, that's going to be through 2024. Lock and key for the next 3 years. So let's talk March 2025 because you can see here the savings column, which is basically cap hit minus total dead cap. Okay, so when we go down this list, that's what this represents. What you're starting to see is before the triggers hit in March and future guarantees, further kick in, there are some small windows where cap savings can occur. We've got zeros here, we've got positives here. They exist. But in order to get that number, you have to take on a $46 million dead cap hit, of which at least $42 million accelerates. Okay? And then here, March 2026, it's almost $39 million of dead cap, all of which accelerates. That would be a one-time hit in 2026, which, if the cap is gigantic, is probably doable based on what Carson Wentz and Jared Goff just did to their teams respectively. So if I have to pencil in an out point, and I think it's really important to do that here. And generally, I give you a potential outline on the contract itself. You don't have one with Mahomes on Spot Track because of all of these variances. So what I can tell you is it's maybe doable here, but I don't see $46 million of dead cap hitting the Chiefs' 2025 payroll. It's just not part of the process, in my opinion. Nor do I think that window will be slammed shut. And that's what I want to interject with here quickly, because yes, this is a huge contract, but the NFL doesn't think long-term anymore. GMs don't think long-term anymore, all right? And players' careers just don't last like that anymore. I don't think Patrick Mahomes will be done playing by 2030. I don't. I think he's, on pace for an Aaron Rodgers career, although some of the foot injuries are somewhat questionable, especially since they've been recurring. But I think he's got a long career. So I understand the timeline of why they did what they did here. They basically, in terms of Kansas City, slotted in 2 generations of Kansas City Chiefs, right? There's one that probably ends in 2026, and maybe I'm being generous there, and then one that has to restart in 2026 and hopefully carries him for the next 5 years. And that's just how the NFL works now. They think in 4 to 5 year windows. So if you're talking Tyreek, Travis Kelce, some of these offensive line players, his offensive core, to be quite honest, you can look at the rebuilt offensive line like the Tooney and the Creed Humphrey and those kind of players, their contracts are going to run through 2025 right now. So it's fair to say that there could be either turmoil or changeover or just a whole little rebuild on the fly happening, which we've seen with Green Bay and Rodgers, which we saw with New Orleans plenty of times with Breeze, with Brady every year. Let's be honest, they never did anything traditional. But what I'm talking about is that generally when your superstar quarterbacks continue on, right, no matter what they do with their contracts, the offense has to change. New wide receivers, new running backs, new offensive linemen. Well, this window for the Chiefs right now runs through about 2025. Whether or not they can contend through that, that's a different conversation. But contractually speaking, the core is built through 2025. So if we look at Mahomes here, there is this early March 2026 out. So there is a little bit of a safety net for the Chiefs. Because who knows? Maybe by 2025, the things have completely come off the track. And everybody's suspect at that point in terms of, potential outs and rebuilding. So there is a window where they can take a $39 million bath and get out of this thing and actually save some cap that year. That's important because the dead cap after this basically just starts to snowball. All right? They built a bit of a valley here in the dead cap structure in 2026 for this reason specifically. That's a window. That's a window stop right there. They're going to rebuild and start to put this thing back on the tracks 26, 27, 28, and you can see the momentum of the dead cap really pick back up. He gets a 2-year guarantee right here that really rockets dead cap back over $100 million, which makes your savings just, ridiculous at that point. And yes, at this point, right, by 2028, you can take a huge hit, all cash, future roster bonus guarantees. You can take a huge hit and get out. But that's what it's going to take. And that's the point of this breakdown is there's no nice and easy, wipe your hands clean, we're moving on. Now, this is release money, okay? That's why I broke down cash and cap as I mentioned before. If at some point the wheels fall off and the Chiefs are toast, they don't want to keep any of their major contracts. They need to roll it all the way back, start over, build to the draft, blah, blah, blah. Many teams go through this. Trading Patrick Mahomes will move all of this cash dead cap, all of it, because it's future guaranteed cash. So you could have a Jared Goff type a Carson Wentz type situation where a team will take on Mahomes at $50 million of dead cap cash, restructure it, make it their own contract, and go there. So there is always a trade out with this contract. With that being said, I need to say one last thing here. What I haven't accounted for is the unknown. And by unknown, I mean future restructures. Like I said, they restructured his contract this year. They took a $21 million roster bonus and prorated it over the next 5 years. That's this here. I assume they're going to do it again there in next year's roster bonus. They may continue to do it to keep themselves cap friendly for the foreseeable future inside their contention window, which is essentially this 2025 year line. The more they do that, the more you're converting future cash into cap, dead cap. So those numbers will slightly increase and be pushed down the line, which means, these numbers here convert to cap here, and everything gets a little bit more difficult because now this is dead cap that stays with the Chiefs, whether they trade him or release him. And that's fine, But you have to think that these numbers are going to increase down here in the bottom of the contract because restructures are probably coming here, here, possibly even here. It's a bit of a Matt Ryan situation where Atlanta just kept pushing it down the line 4 times on his current contract. And it's effective if you know you're going to be keeping him around. I'm not sure they want him right now, but that is what they've basically done to themselves is because of 4 restructures. Matt Ryan's here this year, and he's probably here next year too in some capacity because of what they've done. They can't even trade Matt Ryan because they've converted cash dead cap into cap dead cap, which is unmovable. You have to take it on as a team. So that's the risk of converting those roster bonuses for Patrick Mahomes over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. And I assume that will happen at least 2 times, maybe 3, because the Chiefs will want wiggle room to bring back some of these players or sign new. So that's what's not being accounted for with these numbers. And these numbers are already gigantic. Now, are we getting a $250 million salary cap by 2025? Maybe. And at which point, mid 40 cap hits, a 60 is going to be crazy no matter what it is, but mid 40 cap hits are going to be tenable. And you can probably restructure less or move things down and not worry about $50 million dead cap hits, which is what we're seeing here in the middle of the contract. The point is, it's not easy no matter what. Okay? No team wants to take on $39 million of dead cap to move on from our quarterback. But the Chiefs may have to because there's no easy out until 2031 when just a roster bonus is guaranteed future and they can get out for $14 million. That's how strong this contract is. And I can't say it enough. I've broken down hundreds of these, many of them being, big quarterback contracts. You can talk about $450 million. You can talk about $430 million, whatever it may be before the incentives. Those are huge numbers. But it's not talked about enough just how hard it is for the Chiefs to move on. Whether it's taking a big dead cap lump to get out, whether it's finding a trade partner to take on all of this future guaranteed cash, you can restructure that as you need. Somebody's still going to have to pay the damn money, is the point. Okay? But it's just lock and key. It is so strongly structured by Lee Steinberg that the Chiefs really don't have an easy answer. So, whenever this current iteration of these Chiefs, the Tyreek Chiefs, closes, they better be ready to rebuild because their quarterback is already financially paid and structured to be ready for another window of contention. So it's a lot of pressure on this Chiefs front office. Now, they've done a good job so far, but this is what I mean when I say there's $444 million left. It's not just trolling to stir the pot. It's also to say, hey, this is legitimately in his hands unless the Chiefs take a bath. And they're going to have to eventually. I don't think it ever gets down to 2030, 2031. But, if I had to guess, by 2028, they're getting out of this thing or restructuring, and he's agreeing to move things around and make himself, give himself a $90 million signing bonus or something like that to move around. But, for 5-6 years here, this is what it's going to look like on the Chiefs' accounting tables. It's crazy. And he's a hell of a quarterback, so I'm not overly worried about them having to move on. I just wanted to make note again. This is what it looks like. And it's not like this for any other quarterback. Here's the next big contract that we had, Josh Allen. Okay? You can already see, without me having to speak over this too much, how different this is. This is Josh's contract starting next March and going down to 2028. Again, I've given you pre-trigger situations, pre-roster bonus or future salary guarantees, and then after those triggers happen. So yes, we're over $100 million in dead cap here early on over the next 2 years. The Bills, laugh at that because they know what they have. They know what kind of window they have. They basically brought back their entire roster, and it's signed out 2 to 4 years across the entire starting lineup. So they've done their due diligence from a rebuilding standpoint and now a retainment standpoint to be in a window through at least 2024, in my opinion. This is kind of their line. And guess what else aligns with that? Josh Allen's contract. All right? You're starting to see positive savings here in the $4.5 million. Now, Buffalo's not taking a $46 million dead cap bath to do that, nor should they have to. The difference here between Mahomes and Allen immediately is look at where the future cash guarantees stop. This is where guaranteed salary stops happening. Okay, there's small roster bonuses that kick in, but those don't lock in until the year of. So he's got a roster bonus here that triggers the fifth league day of 2026, fifth league day of 2027, fifth league day of 20. Understand what I'm saying? It's not early guaranteed mechanisms, that was the buzzword with Mahomes. This is what it looks like to not have those. He's got them here. There's early triggers all the way through 2025, and then it just, like a big, bold black line running across this contract, it just stops. That's the last part of the signing bonus. Everything else is just roster bonus that vests that year. Okay, so Josh Allen's age 30 season, 2026, the Bills will be walking into March, into that new league year, with just $8.5 million of dead cap, barring restructures. And I'm not naive enough to think that they're not going to restructure him. They're going to restructure him probably next season, maybe in 2023 as well, just to push cap down. So that this will be bigger. This will be, closer to 18, 20 million if I had to guess, when it's all said and done after a couple of roster bonus restructures. But very tenable, 6 years into the contract. So very, very different. Mahomes has strong structure all the way down to 2031. He's got something that says wow every year. Josh Allen's wow stops happening after 2025, and it becomes whatever the Bills want to do. They can keep it just like this and make it a very easy out. And then in 2027, 28, they have $0 dead cap outs as of right now. Again, that's going to change with restructures. But this is how basic and traditional this contract looks in comparison. It's 5 years of very good structure, 2021 through 2025, and then very, very flimsy from a player standpoint thereafter. Again, he's 30 years old right here. So he's also internally anticipating, all right, time for a new contract right there. Whatever this dead cap is, we're going to slide it over to a new contract. We'll give myself a brand new signing bonus, somewhere around that number probably, and we'll keep going from there. That's best case scenario for Josh Allen and the Bills. But this contract affords that. With this one, you have to work hard to get out of it. Mahomes is going to have to punt on a lot of these future guarantees and probably roll them up into a big signing bonus, like I said, just to start over. Whereas the Bills don't have to do anything. They can basically start from scratch from a cash perspective with Josh Allen in 2026 and build the contract as they see fit, and obviously as he and his agents see fit. It's kind of a complete restart for Josh Allen, whereas not with Patrick Mahomes. You've got $95 million of future cap here, $90 million of future cash here, I should say. If this is the rebuild, trigger point, that's what you're starting with. $90 million of guaranteed cash that somehow has to be rebuilt into the new contract. Like I said, probably a signing bonus at that point. But it's difficult, and it's going to force the Chiefs' hand in a lot of positions. So they're two very, very different things. The bold is savings. Small dead cap, big savings. So traditional 5-year contract for Josh Allen, very much not the case for Patrick Mahomes. And that's what it looks like. Two very different contracts on SpotTrack.com. And when you dive into the actual nuts and bolts of what's going to happen every March, because that's what these guaranteed mechanisms include, very, very different. So the Bills are basically building for one window with Josh Allen. 2021 to 2025. That's what they're thinking. And that's more aligned with the modern game. Nobody's thinking 10 years anymore. They're thinking 3 to 4 to 5. With logic thinking 5 years is kind of crazy anyway. But they're going to start over here most likely with 3 years left. Maybe they'll wait till 2027, but they've afforded themselves that opportunity. Like I said with Mahomes, and I'll say it again, at some point this thing is going to get ripped up. But because of what's guaranteed to him, they're just going to have to do another version of this. And they're going to have to trust their front office to the point of where they can rebuild all of those weapons in that offensive line to fill in quickly and get back to winning so that this money is all justifiable to Patrick Mahomes. They have built in 2 generations worth of Chiefs, and they got a lot of shoes to fill. All right, that's my quick breakdown of Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen from a dead cap, dead cash, savings, cap hit structure situation. Thanks for listening, and check us out at SpotTrack on Twitter and also at the SpotTrack Podcast.